Sometimes your first choice doesn't materialize for whatever reason. So.
Called to order the regular monthly meeting of the Ellsworth City Council. This is Monday, December 14, 2015, 7 p.m. All city councilors are present, accounted for. And item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. We invite you to stand with us as we do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And for the benefit of those of you that are with us tonight and haven't been at a council meeting before, or maybe it's been a while, we do have agendas here, and feel free to come up and get a copy of the agenda so that you can follow along. And if there's a few more back there that need them, we'll just take them back too. All righty. Item number 3, rules of order. Our council meetings are conducted under Robert's Rules of Order, as well as rules that were established at the organizational meeting of the council in November of 2015. Item number 4, adoption of minutes from the following meetings of the Ellsworth City Council: November 6, 2015, special council meeting; November 9, 2015, organizational meeting of council; November 13, 2015, special council meeting; and November 16, 2015, regular council meeting. Council, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's 6-0 and 1 abstention. Item number 5, Councilor Moore. Item number 5, City Manager's Report. We'll defer to you, Manager Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick items, given our heavy agenda tonight. First, the Maine DOT did hold a railroad crossing public hearing on December 1st, since your last regular council meeting, and it went well. I presented, as well as representatives from the Down East Scenic Railroad, and we would expect to have a decision from the Maine DOT, hopefully within a month, that would allow a new railroad crossing to lay the groundwork for the new entrance to the high school. That's going to be done in conjunction with the Maine DOT project next spring. So that's moving forward.
Great.
Just a reminder that the council has a workshop tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on the visioning and goal setting survey. The results are in, and that's going to be a chance for the council to absorb those results in terms of shaping the final document. And then finally, I'm attending from 3 to 5 on Wednesday the annual meeting of the Maine Municipal Review Committee, the Solid Waste Consortium. They are going to be presenting their proposal and their plans for solid waste management for the coming year, so be attending and sharing that information with the council at a later time. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Anyone have questions for the manager? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 6, which is committee reports. Any councilors who have attended committee meetings since the last council meeting and wish to report, this would be your opportunity. Councilor Moore.
At the most recent Harbor Committee meeting, most of the councilors were present for a workshop with the commissioners, and with the idea of trying to work out future plans, short and long range. And there was a concern that perhaps one of the most important things to do right away was to get a dredge planned down by the number 4 can at dead low tide. It's impassable. And we were fortunate to have our city manager there, who has some connections, and he may be able to facilitate. And that gave the commissioners a little hope that perhaps something might move along so that we can get that done.
All right, thank you. Any other committees or commissions to report? I just have one item that's coming from City Council's Finance Committee. Representative Louis Lucchini met with us recently. I think most of you were able to hear that presentation. He discussed LD 779, which is a new law increasing the number of agency liquor stores for qualifying communities of 10,000 or less, with a focus on communities affected by seasonal population and especially tourism, as well as service center and transportation corridor impact communities. Under the new law, the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages will conduct open agency application periods in January and June of 2016. And part of the process, the host municipality must indicate its interest in seeing that additional agency store in the community. And so this is something that we said we would help him move along if at all possible. And all it would mean is a letter of interest from the city to the Bureau, and then any interested businesses that want to apply, that would be up to them to do that. So I guess all I really need is, I don't think we even need a motion on this, just a general consensus, and I think we kind of got that at the finance meeting, but I want it on the record. And just to ask, is everybody okay with having a letter go forward to support that LD?
Yes.
If there is any opposition, I'll hear it now. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification, what the council or what the city letter would indicate the need for a new agency store, but it would not indicate a preference for any particular owner.
Correct.
Or private property. That would go out to bid in January and June, but rather the city letter will address the need for such a facility, and certainly given the tourist impact here and traffic patterns, I would think we can make a pretty good case.
Right. Thank you, sir. Any other committee reports at all? None. Seeing none. I'm going to go to item number 7, citizen comments. And before we open the meeting for citizen comments, I want to give you all a chance to think about this. During this time of the meeting, we allow citizens to come before us and make a presentation basically on any subject that is of concern to them. We limit those presentations to 3 minutes. It can be extended by the chair if need be, but we'd like to keep them short and keep them succinct. I know that a number of people are here for various reasons tonight, but those who are here, particularly for item number 17, which is way down on the agenda, the discussion and action on appropriateness of a moratorium on land development, I'm going to open the floor now for you to make a presentation. If you haven't already had a chance to speak at the planning board, either the planning board meetings or the presentation that was made to the city council, then we'll welcome your short presentation. We're not going to entertain repeated information that we've already heard. We've heard a lot of it from the planning board. We've heard a lot of it from the city council presentation. We even had a presentation at the finance committee, and we've also received many letters, emails, and so on. So if you are here tonight and you're offering new information, we'll give you a chance to say your piece there. Or if you didn't get a chance to speak in a public forum before now, we'll allow that. When we come to item number 17, the discussion and action will be pretty much limited to the council table, the manager, any staff members we should call on, and also our city attorney, Mr. Bearer, who is with us tonight. So, having said that, and then anyone who has comments on other areas of business pertaining to the city, we are opening the floor to you as well. So it's citizen comment time, and we ask that you come to the podium state your name for the record and make your case, make your presentation, or just make whatever comment you would like. Usually what happens on the citizen comments, the council hears you. They don't usually respond, or they don't take action at that point, but we're willing to listen and hear you out. So citizen comments now open.
We have one.
Good evening, I'm Jim Newitt, 6 Parcher Street, regarding the proposed Parcher Street development. I've talked at every meeting so far, but my new information is, Michelle asked me when I inquired about having a peer review of the sewer lines on Parcher Street, she asked me to go get a listing of all of the backups that we've had over the years, and there are 13 such backups. I've enumerated them on this document I'll give you. I can tell you 6 of them are in the last 5 years, and I can tell you 5 of them are at 10 Parcher Street, which is the location of the proposed development. That's all I got.
Mr. Newitt, before you leave, do you have a copy of that we
I'm going to
can?
give them to you right now.
Okay, great. I was just going to say, anyone that has information like that, if you just give it to the clerk, and we can copy and make sure everybody gets a copy of it. So, thank you. Anyone else? Citizen comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Terry Willett, and I live at 70 Park Street. My comment is more on the scope of specifically why we ask that a moratorium be considered. And my perspective and point of view is that I understand there's been comprehensive plans drawn up, and a lot of time has gone into them. And I understand there's you have to have a balance between development and maintaining some of what's already here. Our city has gone through a lot of growth. I think everybody knows that, and a lot of really great things have happened. I feel that the safety concerns with regards to this proposal would be the qualifying consideration for the moratorium. And secondly, I think that it gives the citizens who are obviously very concerned and involved. I think there's been a lot more people at local government meetings than there have been in a while, and people talking about things and getting information about how our city runs and works, that if citizens were allowed to perhaps work together with the city, we could just find some minor tweaking and adjustments that might make the ordinances that we already have perhaps a better overall fit for very, different specific situations. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, come on. You did so good last time. Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you or counselors. Thanks for the time. Very quickly, we first learned of a moratorium when we first started to question this at the planning office, and we were told by the city planner that consideration of a moratorium would be an idea because, as she put it, there is a disconnect between what is written in the ordinance and what was intended. So that's how this kind of got started in my mind. I never would have known about a moratorium. This isn't my purview. But I think that what we really need to take a look at is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. The Comprehensive Plan Committee and all the work that's been done is great. But sometimes you don't realize the effect of an ordinance until something happens. And in this case, something's happening, and it's against the ordinance when it says that it should be there to, one second, getting old. to protect existing and attract new residential neighborhoods. This isn't existing, and it's not being protected. We're putting a square peg in a round hole. Might say that, geez, well, what if we build a McMansion there? There'd be a single-family residence. Everybody would be happy. That would be fine. But would you expect anybody to build a McMansion on that lot? It would look silly. Just like 10 units in a single-family neighborhood will look silly. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Earlett. Anyone else here to speak? Yes, come forward. Thank you.
I wasn't planning to speak, and I've never spoken in front of the city council before. I'm Marcia Costin. I live directly across the street from the proposed apartment units that are going in there. I love this community. I've done wonderful community work. Gary can attest to the tens of thousands that our group has raised in this community. And I just worry about how things are going to change in our community. And it will, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but it will definitely change how things are on Parcher Street. And that's something that I think we need to think about. And if this can happen on Parcher, where there are only, I think, 10 or 11 homes on that street, it's a cross street between Birch and Park. It's a cross street. If you have a house for sale next to you, be very afraid. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here for another meeting.
Just happened to be here.
I have an old saying, I fought the law won. But I've been up against this for many years. I not only have a jail in my backyard, I also have a 6-unit apartment house. I share your agony. I know what you're going through. But I think we have some very capable people. And working together, perhaps you'll have better luck than I did. So I wish you well. And everyone means well. And you don't do anything until it affects you, really. So I'm here for a wonderful project for housing for 55 and over. And you're probably not even interested in it. But this is my new goal. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Todd?
Thank you for making time today. I have to say I was really excited to hear that you all took the time today to consider a moratorium in development in the neighborhood zone.
Your name for the record.
Oh, sorry, Todd Little-Siebold, Little-Siebold.
Thank you, Todd.
I live over on the Bayside Road. I don't live on Parcher Street. But as many of you know, I'm very concerned about the growth, the nature of the growth here in Ellsworth over the last 15 years since I have lived here. And I was really pleased to see that you were considering a moratorium of such growth because the community is going through a kind of change that I think, based on the work that you all are already doing on visioning for the future of Ellsworth, it's clear that you know that the kind of growth that's been happening in our community has sort of taken us by surprise, and I really admire the work that's been being done in the planning department to try to respond to that and control it. And I think the people on Parcher Street, like many of us, were surprised by some of the changes in the ordinances. I think most of us don't pay attention closely to the ordinances on a day-to-day basis. But I think this would be a great opportunity for you all to reflect on the nature of the kinds of changes in this community. I don't think just in the neighborhood zone, but in others as well, to consider what would be considered an incompatible use. I was struck by, and I haven't actually done it, but I was considering doing it, how many units, if you put 10 units, apartments or condominiums all along Parcher Street, how many people would live on that street and how desirable that community would be. And I would really encourage you to take the idea of a moratorium really seriously. To look at the ways that our economic development strategy, comprehensive plan, and zoning aligns. And ultimately to reflect on what it means to protect, and this is one of the goals of the planning department and process, and also our economic development goals, to protect and enhance the quality of life. Ultimately, and I said this, a similar comment in some ways to the planning board, but if the community, I don't believe this is simply about people being opposed to one development in their backyard, but rather about the future of the community. And if we are to protect the quality of life in this community, I think we're going to have to look really hard at what it would mean to protect people from incompatible development. And I think we've seen a fair amount of it over the last several years as different developments have taken place. I think we've done a good job of controlling some of that, but I think to protect the sort of residential quality, and I know you all, with the work that you did with the consultants and listening to the community, know that in this community people value their neighborhoods and the quality of life in their neighborhoods. That was one of the main answers that came back to you from the listening sessions from the community, that they wanted connectivity between their neighborhoods and they wanted their neighborhood to be protected. So I think you have new information, and I think it would be a very interesting thing for you to consider whether between the growth that's happened. I was reading the economic development strategy again. It's interesting how much has changed in the last 8 years. It's dramatic, I think. That it may be a good time for the community to take a pause, step back, and look at how we are actually protecting the character of this community. And I applaud you and thank you for taking the time to consider this tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak during the citizen comment period?
Yeah, but very briefly.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and for you to hear so many people on the subject. I heard Chairman indicate that the letters that have been submitted to the planning board and the testimony that's been given to the planning board, am I correct that it will be considered as a part of this record as you consider the moratorium question?
It's all part of what we've received, yes.
Okay. And
state your name for the record, please, sir.
My name is Jason Barrett. I'm an Ellsworth resident. I live here with my wife and 4 children. I'm also here in a representational capacity. I want to thank you. The last time that I was in the presence of most of you was on a sunny day in late September as we were at the Knowlton Park. And as we gathered with many of the people here and many citizens of this city who had put in several years and gone through an enormous amount of effort to raise money for something that they believed in, and a project that they felt was well planned and that represented where the city had come from, an important part of its past, but also projected the values of what it wanted to be for the future. I want, and I think that process was very inclusive, and it produced a product that everyone can be proud of. I want to applaud the city council and the city manager for the visioning process that's gone on. And I would suggest that what you're seeing in terms of people's participation at the planning board in relation to this project ought to be viewed as an extension of that inquiry, because you are hearing, as you listen to what people are saying, is this is what Ellsworth means to me, this is what I want it to continue to mean, and this is where we want to go, and this is what we want it to look like. And the moratorium process is about, perhaps when we are changing, it's about stepping back and saying, do the current ordinances and the current language allow us to protect what we have? And the moratorium statute provides both that a moratorium is necessary if there's an overburdening of public facilities and infrastructure, and you've heard lots of testimony before the planning board that addresses that point. It also says that it's necessary to prevent serious public harm from residential development. You've also heard lots of testimony on that point. So I think that here, when you have a high-density development in a low-density existing single-family neighborhood that threatens to change the character of that neighborhood, we need to, I don't know that our current ordinances allow the planning board to as fully and as clearly consider that. Are we changing the character of the neighborhood? And I want to say that it goes a step further. One of the things, and I'm not going to name names, but I do value the individuals that sit on the city council. And one of the things that I value is when I hear stories about neighbors helping neighbors. Neighbors know each other and neighbors help each other. They bring the newspaper to people who are shut-ins and invalids. They know each other and they can trust each other. And parents can know the neighbor and they can trust that their kids can play in the backyard or the side yard and not be fearful of that. When you have a 10-unit or 11-unit condominium, it's hard to keep track of who's there, who's not there, and to develop those kinds of relationships. That's an issue. I'm going to just end. I was a part of the Sesame Street generation. Grew up on that, and one of my favorite activities on Sesame Street was that game. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the others by the time I finish my song? Did you guess which thing was not like the others? Did you guess which thing just doesn't belong? It's about character, it's about fit, and hopefully the moratorium will allow us to tweak just a little bit the current tools in place to help us answer that question, what doesn't belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
I'm Dustin Updike at 71 Park Street. It is true that you often don't get people here unless it is directly affecting them. We have two sons. My wife and I have two sons. But our high school student walks through Parcher Street every morning to meet the other group of kids down at the beginning of the trail. And our 2-year-old has a propensity to dart out into traffic as soon as you turn your back. And so not only do I worry about property value, I do worry about safety and the traffic on there. I also want to say that this whole process has been very educational as I've been attending these planning board meetings in the past. And one of the things that I learned at the last planning board meeting that I raised some concern for me is that the ordinances as they're written really restrict the planning board to preventing the development of what was supermarkets was the term that was used at the last meeting, and not 11-unit rentals. And I think that if the ordinances are like that, and we do need to address what kind of an effect that has. And so I would also ask for consideration of this moratorium. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on the subject of item 17 or any other matter of business? Thank you for keeping your, okay. I want to thank everyone for keeping your comments short and precise, and I didn't want to see us still sitting here at 9:30 or 9:45 like some of the meetings have drawn on, and so if it goes on, at least you have had a chance. Go ahead.
I'm Lillian Frank. I live across the street, 7 Parker Street, from the thing being discussed. I just want to say I'm the future generation of this, and when I come back to take care of my mom when she's old, I don't. Sorry, Mom. I don't want to
There's a
look
plan.
across the street and see this big building of stuff there. And just in the future, I just want to bring across that that's not what I envision Ellsworth to look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And your mom thanks you too. Yeah. She's got the plan. Anyone else? Seeing no takers, I'm going to move to item number 8, presentation of awards. Lieutenant Harold Page, come forward.
Sir?
This is a special recognition, and I'm glad you got a full house here.
One quick vacation just for me.
The citation says the City of Ellsworth proudly presents this certificate of service to Harold Page in recognition of your 35 years of service as lieutenant for the City of Ellsworth Police Department. Your devotion to duty and loyalty to the community have contributed to the improvement of the City of Ellsworth. Presented this 14th day of December 2015, David Cole, City Manager, Heidi Grindo, City Clerk. Harold, congratulations. Chief Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, City Council, City Manager. Before I start I've got 2 presentations for awards. I wanted to just acknowledge what we just saw. Lieutenant Page has served the badge and the gun for 37 years, 2 years in Bangor and then 35 here. And you don't see that very often nowadays. It's a tough job, and he's the job that he signed up for was to help people, and he's still doing that today. So I think it's a great accomplishment. Also in the back is another 30-year veteran of this city. I'm taking a little liberty here tonight. Fred Erlenbach doesn't get the awards because he's part-time, but he's been serving the city for over 30 years. So I also wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you.
He puts on a mean centennial, too.
Yes, he does. So now it's my pleasure to present the Officer of the Year and Dispatcher of the Year for 2015. Some may not know that once a year, the workers and the men and women of the police department take a vote, and they name amongst themselves the Officer of the Year and the Dispatcher of the Year. I asked them to think about that and use the following criteria to make their decisions. I asked them to think about a person's integrity, which I define as the person demonstrates proper moral and ethical behavior in decision-making, the person is driven to do the right thing, and the person is trustworthy. I asked that they think about the person's professionalism. Does a person do more than the minimum? Is a person an excellent role model, and is he or she more competent in all aspects of the job? Third, I asked them to think about the person's teamwork. Is a person good to work with? Do they help out, and are they reliable? Fourth, the work ethic. Does a person work hard, and is that person motivated to get better? When on shift, does he or she do what they're supposed to do? And lastly, I asked that they think about the community service. Does a person embody and treat the public with respect, and is a person responsive to the public's concerns? It's often said that recognition from one's peers or coworkers is the most meaningful. Our coworkers know us the best. They see all of our strengths and they see all of our weaknesses. They see us when things are going well, and they also see us when things aren't going well. Coworkers see us warts and all, So it's this honest feedback that is so meaningful to all of us. This year's Dispatcher of the Year, I'm going to have you come forward, is Leah Matson. Leah is the newest member of our dispatch team. She's a positive person with a cheery disposition. She is driven to succeed and has worked hard to learn her new job quickly. She's always looking for new things to take on to stay busy during the slow times, and she likes to be continually challenged. Leah is an excellent coworker because she gets along well with others, she's respectful, and has a strong work ethic. She is an excellent addition to the team, and she truly believes that what she's doing is important and worth her best efforts. Your coworkers said this about you. She brings a fresh energy to the office. She's competent. She's not afraid to stand up for herself. She's got a positive attitude. She's always willing to listen, always willing to jump in and help. She volunteers to take shifts, strives not only to do what is expected, but strives to go above and beyond. Leah is making a positive mark on the community and is an asset to the department. We are lucky to have her. So with that, I'll have the mayor present you with your certificate.
The Ellsworth Police Department proudly presents this certificate to Leah Matson in recognition of being selected as Dispatcher of the Year 2015. After having been identified by your peers as an exemplary dispatcher worthy of special recognition for your unquestionable integrity, consummate professionalism, team-oriented spirit, strong work ethic, and exceptional service to the community. Your devotion to duty and loyalty to the Ellsworth Police Department and the community at large has contributed to our citizens' quality of life and Ellsworth's quality of place. Presented this 14th day of December 2015, signed Christopher Coleman, Chief of Police, Ellsworth Police Department.
Now for Officer of the Year, could I have Sergeant Glenn Moses come forward, please? Sergeant Moser leads by example. He is a true professional and a man of outstanding character. Sergeant Moser respects the public at all times and conveys competence without arrogance. He has the respect of those who work for him and has an excellent work ethic. It is clear that Sergeant Moser is committed to his profession and is in it for the right reasons, to help people. He displays his commitment to our core values each day by the way he conducts himself, and he's always willing to solve the problems that exist. Sergeant Moser contributes more than is required by handling the highway safety grant programs, serving as our drug recognition evaluator, as well as working in partnership with Healthy Acadia to provide substance abuse education to area schools. Sergeant Moser is an influential leader who cares deeply for his coworkers and the welfare of the Ellsworth Police Department. Those were my words. These are the coworkers. Sergeant Moser is respectful of all officers and dispatchers. He's understanding and easy to talk to. He's a good leader, and he picks up a crazy amount of overtime. The stripes on your sleeves aren't just decorations. They come with a huge amount of responsibility. And you're the one that has to make decisions that affect people's lives. And it's not very often, not very long before you're going to make people upset in the police department. You've been able to make those decisions, and you've held on to the respect. So you are a true leader, and I appreciate everything you do. Mayor?
The Ellsworth Police Department proudly presents this certificate to Sergeant Glenn Mosier in recognition of being selected as Officer of the Year 2015. After having been identified by your peers as an exemplary police officer, worthy of special recognition for your unquestionable integrity, your consummate professionalism, team-oriented spirit, strong work ethic, and exceptional service to this community. Your devotion to duty and your loyalty to the Ellsworth Police Department and the community at large has contributed to our citizens' quality of life and Ellsworth's quality of place. Presented this 14th day of December 2015, signed Christopher J. Coleman, Chief of Police, Ellsworth Police Department. We don't get enough opportunities to thank our police department and every member of that department and all of our first responders. We just want to say again, on behalf of council and the citizens of Ellsworth, thank you all for all the efforts that you bring to this job that you're in. We'll move now to item number 9, which is consent agenda. There's one item, Council Order number 121502, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to accept payments on tax-acquired timeshare units per the attached spreadsheet and authorize City Manager to release said properties through municipal quitclaim deeds.
So move, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Item number 10, new business. Public hearing and action on the application for new or renewal of the following licenses. First one is Finales of Maine, 12 Down East Highway for renewal of a city Class C license, victular and liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant liquor license, malt and vinous. Staff, any issues? Nothing. I will open the public hearing. Anyone care to comment on this application? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Council, what's your desire on this?
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the request of Finales for renewal of their license.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Next license is Ellsworth CI LLC, doing business as Ellsworth Comfort Inn, 130 High Street, for renewal of a city lodging license. Any issues with staff? No. Public hearing is open. Anyone care to comment on this application? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Council action.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of Ellsworth CI LLC, renewal of the city lodging license.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next license, Adalbert Gaspar, doing business as Eastward Bowling Lanes, 25 Eastward Lane, Suite 6, for renewal of a city Class B license, that's victular, liquor, and arcade, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 3 and 4 malt and vinous liquor license. Any issues, staff, with this? Open the public hearing. Anyone care to comment on this particular application? Hearing none. Public hearing is closed. Council action.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of Eastwood Bowling Lanes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Next is Jeff and Diane Kelly Locos, DBA 86 This, 125 Main Street, for renewal of a city Class C license, victular and liquor, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 3 and 4 malt and vinous liquor license. Any questions or comments as far as the staff is concerned? Everything's fine? No issues? Public hearing is open. Anyone who cares to comment on the application for 86 This? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Council ready for action.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the request from 86 This for renewal of their license.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Moved, unanimously carried. And the last license tonight, Troy A. Adams, doing business as Jasper's Restaurant and Motel, 200 High Street, for renewal of a city Class A license, victular, liquor, amusement, and lodging, and renewal of a state Class A restaurant, Class A malt, spirituous, and vinous liquor license. Any issues, staff? Public hearing is open. Anyone care to comment on this application? Hearing none. Public hearing is closed. Council?
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the request of Jasper's Restaurant for renewal of city licenses.
Second.
And we include the state license as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 11, presentation on the senior housing study findings by Bruce Mayberry Consulting. And we're going to defer to the city planner.
Yes, thank you very much. Just a few comments before we start. I just want to take the time to thank the members of the committee, who we have 3 of them, I think, here tonight. We have Ruth Foster. Thank you very much. We have Audie Tunney. Thank you. And we also have Deb Chalmers. Thank you very much. Also on the committee was Joe Cooper, Terry Sargent.
Joe's here.
Joe, I'm sorry. I thought you couldn't come. Joe is here tonight. We had Terry Sargent. She's not here. Okay. We had Councilor Crossway, Councilor Moore, Sarah Sherwood, and Rebecca Seinfeld. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. And we had just an awesome consulting team. And I'm very proud and glad to take a few minutes of your time tonight to make that presentation by Bruce is going to make the presentation. We have angled the TV towards the audience. You all should have a copy of that PowerPoint presentation if that is okay with you. Make sure that they can watch the PowerPoint presentation.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's Bruce Mayberry. I'm principal of BCM Planning, LLC. I am the only member of BCM Planning, LLC. I worked on this study for you 11 years ago on a workforce housing study. I'm sorry it's been so long to get the sequel to you, but tonight we're talking about the 55 and older market. And I was very pleased to be able to do this work for you because in many ways this study really gets at a lot of the unknowns that many of us don't know when we get into studies of this nature because we don't have access to a survey. Consultant team, again, was myself. Pan Atlantic Research of Portland, Maine, a very capable and well-established firm in Portland, one of the leading polling firms in the state. They work nationally and internationally as well. I was fortunate to get them on board as a sub-consultant to help us with the regional housing survey. And as you know, it was a larger return than we expected, I think thanks to the city's media outreach and so forth, that we got 800 returns. That's a really fantastic return. I think the city and the region, it's interesting, they sort of hold together as a group in many ways because we get the same rate of return inside and outside the city, which is fantastic because we were looking for a regional look. As an overview, I just wanted to make a few points, and I think I can use bullet points because the police department has left. Sorry. Should have got permission. The 55 and older market, I just want to say at the outset, is not a single monolithic group. It's composed of a lot of different consumer interest groups within that. Not everybody is the same. There's a lot of propaganda out there, I will say, about 55 and older as a single thing. So I was careful in this to try to differentiate between the market segments. One of the things you asked us to do was to identify gaps in the local inventory of senior-oriented housing units. We found that there are gaps in the local inventory and that there is some market support for products that are not currently here. So that's the major takeaway, I think, from the study. And the other thing I think that's important is that the survey respondents over time show that as the population begins to age in the region, it's possible for Ellsworth to capture a greater share of that as people move in closer to services. One thing, there are 2 things I think that are important as a backdrop. The growth in the senior population and households is pretty much inevitable. It's pretty easy to predict based on the demographics that are here. What's difficult to predict is in-migration. But in any of the projections we did, we're seeing a large growth, especially in the 75 and older population. As that begins to climb over the years, more demand for transportation and socialization programs, more personal care demand for in-home services and perhaps assisted living, different adaptations to the home that people may need to age in place. At the other hand, we have the backdrop, which I emphasize in the report, that the demographics throughout northern New England really show a declining labor force population and households at the same time the senior population is growing rapidly. I mentioned this is just an example of the growth projection for the 75 and older population, not in nursing homes, that will have a need in Hancock County for some type of supportive services, either with routine needs, such as getting to the doctor, doing their errands, or a lower number needing some help as time goes on with personal care, especially as they reach 80 to 85 years old or older. The other takeaway, again, a backdrop to this, I mentioned the growth in the senior households, which we're showing here in orange, and a decline, and this is the optimistic projection, by the way, the decline in the what I call the labor force households under 65. So the principal risk, I would say, in these markets is if the under 65 households are declining as seniors are trying to sell their homes and move to a different product, do we have enough people to purchase those homes? We'll have less than we used to in the old days. So my feeling is that part of the solution has to be a strong economy, attention to the workforce housing as well as the seniors, so that you have enough labor force in the area to keep the market activity going, so buying and selling will take place. Otherwise, we're all just selling homes and renting from each other over time and not increasing total households. Inventory gaps. These are gaps in terms of what's here, what's not here. Most of what's here is lower income or subsidized senior housing, about 218 units. You have the new Seaport Village, a new assisted living, and I think another one that may be on the way. You do not have what we call active adult ownership communities. These are communities that have built-in maintenance services for the yards and homes that are age restricted. And perhaps the market has not turned yet, design has not turned yet toward universal design, which is simply not age restricted, but just redesigning homes so that they have a longer useful life through the generations. On the rental side, you have the apartments, mostly for low income, low to moderate income. Most of those households are $25,000 a year incomes or less. But there are no independent living apartments that have services, meals, housekeeping, transportation, or combinations with optional personal care. Newer market rate apartments. In many parts of the state, most development follows the availability of federal funds or in the state tax credit funds that help support new market opportunities, but those tend to serve only about 20% of the households would fit in the window of income eligibility. Others that might have slightly higher incomes are not eligible for those. So again, there's a gap there potentially for market rate apartments. So the question was, given these gaps, can we find any evidence that there is demand for them? And this is the role of the housing survey. Again, it gets to questions normally you can't get to. If you're doing a market study in a metropolitan area, you can look at comparables and you can look at what's been developed and how fast it was absorbed and who moved in and so forth. But if the product isn't here, we have to go to a survey. That was the reason for recommending the mail survey that we did. I really appreciate the committee. We had a lot of back and forth on the content. The city did good media outreach. I mentioned the strong return, and I think the strong return itself is evidence that there's some demand out there not being answered currently. The good thing about getting 800 survey returns back instead of 300 to 400, which is more of our expectation, is that we were able to do more analysis of the age groups within, because as I mentioned before, their interests are quite different. This graph gives us a feeling for how many people are either looking to sell, either listing their homes, planning to list, versus looking to rent, looking to buy over the last couple of years. And listings exceed the number that are actually looking, as you'd expect. But this is a normal amount of market activity in terms of the desire for moving. We don't move, especially in the senior market, much more than 5% of households per year. So that's quite normal. We ask people about their housing preferences, what types of housing, and this particular graph shows the overall view for everybody 55 and older, so it's not differentiated by age. But as you can see, the single-family home and the active adult community, which could be single-family or attached units, is the strongest, followed by apartments. Assisted and independent living, people did not tend to differentiate that much between the two, so there's a bit of overlap there. Multifamily mobile home was pretty low, but multifamily is something that we didn't expect to find very high because Hancock County has one of the lowest ratios of attached and multifamily housing in the state. When we looked at, and this is the point I was going to make earlier, is that we break down the percent distribution of respondents who said they were very likely to consider certain housing options, that when we get to in the white bar, 55 to 64, the younger part, they're very interested, more interested in single-family homes and quality apartments, but not so much the demand currently for the active adult communities, or obviously apartments with services. So I think what we have to keep in mind, if the target were going to include 55 to 64, you've probably got to look at single-family products and not multifamily. We looked at the home price expectations of people that said they were potentially interested in a different type of unit. What this breaks down, it tells us the price point changes very dramatically once you rise above $200,000 and go toward $250,000. The level of interest is halved when you go. So somewhere between those numbers is probably the effective mark for most households, what they might be looking for in a price if they were to move. Whether that's possible in actual development would be for the developers to sharpen their pencils and see if that can be done. Market rent cost expectations surprised me a bit. The median gross rent in the area is just under $1,000 right now for a two-bedroom apartment. There was a sizable, about 40% of the respondents said they'd be willing to pay more than that. For a quality, we termed it luxury unit to differentiate from the typical subsidized unit. But it indicates to me that there's a role for market rate senior rental housing as well. I don't have to tell you about Ellsworth's attraction factors. And again, we're writing here for an audience that who knows who will receive the report and look at it from various states, various developer interests, and so forth. But I think it was important to show Ellsworth is its own economic center in its own right for employment, retail, obviously, a gateway to Acadia, but again, a hub for its own economy. It's a safe community. It has city-level services, a low equalized tax rate. Now, folks from outside the city will say, no, the taxes are high there. But actually, for a city, it was tied in the data set I looked at with South Portland for the lowest equalized tax rate, and that's as a percent of market value in the state. We mentioned a strong civic engagement, I think, was something that you can't build. That's something you either have or you don't. And the AARP's livability index underscores that also, showing Hancock County and Ellsworth as very high in that measure. Again, this is just an illustration of the relative role of Ellsworth in the county. Very strong in terms of medical facilities and nursing home beds in the hospital. High in terms of low-income senior apartments, jobs, payroll, and so forth. There's a very high percentage of those things. But when you look at households, we're looking at numbers like 12%, 14%, and your share of jobs and so forth, some of the economic measures, is twice that. So I guess you could look at it as either the economy is overperforming relative to housing, or perhaps the housing stock locally is underperforming relative to the total economy. When we did the survey, we also figure a certain percent of households will move in from outside. How many would this be? It's difficult to tell. We used a ratio of about 25%. Looking at indicators from the survey and from what other housing projects have realized, this seemed to be reasonable based on some of the indicators that we looked at. So coming into Greater Ellsworth from other areas, the factors usually related for younger people, sometimes coming in, they want to move closer to their parents, if facilities there, or older folks want to come back to their home community, especially if new housing becomes available. So I won't go into the numbers, but using the survey, using the demographics, we projected How many total households are there in the marketplace that might be interested, willing to move on an average annual basis? And within what time frame, add the inflow potential to project what the annual level of interest might be in various products. So for ownership, I think an active adult community, based on the survey, would need a single-family focus. People tend to move, when they move to these communities, they look for a home that's about the size of the one they left, but better designed. And in Ellsworth, your average single family has stayed about 1,500 square feet, which is a nice, modest size. It hasn't grown outsized like it has in many other areas. I don't think it has to be part of an assisted living or supportive living campus, as many of them are, because we found that the ages in these units, these cottage units, are quite old, and most of them, though, are on campuses with supportive living. We mentioned the maximum practical pricing for the middle of the market is somewhere between $200 and $250. I think that the alternative is always, we look at age-restricted housing, which we did here, but we also have to realize that, you know, half the market is not really interested in whether it's age-restricted or not. They just want good design that meets their needs, and it's something that they can live in long-term. The rental products, I think if you're looking at senior apartments, often because of the funding mechanisms, you might have to see low to moderate income as part, but the same programs can also finance a mix of a low to moderate income and market rate units. And I would say you could have at least 40% with no income limit, again, depending on the actual project economics. Market rental units with no age restriction that have 1 or 2 bedrooms, an elevator, and some common services serve both retirement markets and the labor force needs, which you may need as Jackson Labs expands in the city, and I'm sure will have some effect on the overall demand for total housing units. I think independent living is probably going to go the direction with having independent living with the basic housekeeping, transportation services, but with personal care as an option. A portion of that market will not be able to afford the typical price levels of those units. Typically, even independent living in my area, the cheapest that I know of is about $2,800 a month for a meal a day and the basic services, and assisted living probably $4,500 to $5,000 or more. So not all of this demand would be realized if it's purely market rate. Uses of the study. I think there are a number of possible uses that if it goes out to planning, and this is completely up to the city how you want to use it, but I think the more information is out there, the better. Purpose of market studies is to look at risk, to allow others to evaluate risk, and to have some fact-driven information behind their decision-making. So there are others looking for reports of this nature. I think you can post them to your website, whatever you'd like to do. But I think that some information goes a long way. I think if you look at the amount of paper that you have before you, don't be discouraged with that, because we try to do a summary report, but also the details are there for those that need that additional information. I did have a developer ask me one time, he said, you know, we don't need a whole big report. We just need to know what you think. And I said, well, it doesn't matter what I think, it's what I can prove. So, and I think he was just saying, well, how much for just the conclusions? You know, we don't need this whole big study. So it's designed to be, to go to a number of different audiences, and hopefully that'll have a practical use in the long run. Thank you.
Bruce, do you want to take questions if there happen to be any from council?
Sure.
Questions, anyone? I know there's a lot to absorb, and even more so in the report, but some great information here.
Just a
Councilor
quick
Fortier.
comment. I breezed through highlights this weekend,
Yeah.
and I can bet right now my salary for the year of city council, this is one report that is not going to sit on the shelf. There are people out there that are going to grab this up and make decisions on projects in Ellsworth because of the excellent information we got in that report.
That's good.
Well
to hear.
done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else care to comment?
I just
Councilor
have
Perkins.
some question. I'm sure that it's all extrapolated in that big volume of information.
Sure. And
but just
more.
from what you just covered, I just have quick questions, definitions
Sure.
and things.
Yeah.
So, what is an active adult community exactly? What does that mean?
Well, the national, there's no, the common definition of it in all the literature has come to be a community that's age restricted, normally 55 or older, and it's typically an ownership situation, and it's usually provided so that you have built-in contracts for and costs for services. So you would pay for your common area maintenance, sometimes your interior maintenance, and your exterior yard maintenance, plowing, and so forth, is all part of a monthly fee. A number of these are done as cooperatives. Now, we didn't ask people particularly about cooperatives, but because it's another confusing term, but that's how many of them are organized. Sometimes they're the cottage portion of some of the developments, and like Dirigo Pines, the Parker Ridge and Blue Hill has a portion of it, and Birch Harbor and Bar Harbor, Birch Bay and Bar Harbor. So it's ownership, services included. So it's an ownership product primarily.
And then another, so this one's the one that's looking the most. So
Okay.
I'm stuck on here. So, okay, so total households and samples. So 25% of the sample was 75 plus.
Right.
And then, so are these exclusive of each other? So they had to choose one or the other, or can these be?
No.
64% want to live in a mobile home, and they may also want to be independent in that mobile home.
Right. There are some overlaps between those. It wasn't an we asked them to rate each choice to see how strong it was. So that particular graph is just to show you the age distribution of who said they were very interested.
But they may be duplicate, so the same
They
person
could,
they had
right.
selected.
And I did find there's a lot of overlap between assisted living and independent, because I don't think people drew a clear distinction between that. There's less overlap between a single-family home and an adult community, because I think people did recognize the difference in being an age-restricted environment than just a single-family unit.
So this was our first shot at ranked voting?
You could say that. Don't ask me to tabulate it, though, exactly.
I had one question, if I may, to our Economic Development Director. Mickey, wasn't this adult active community a component of First Atlantic Health when we were talking Union Street? You can just say yes.
Yes, it was, and they're still looking at that.
Okay.
To
Yeah.
expand.
Yeah.
But once again, it was the space
Yeah.
that wasn't available.
Councilor Blanchett.
Did any of this ask about transportation, where they wanted to be in this, in their housing, whether it was rental or whether it was active community? Within the walking distance of the downtown, or was it the outlying areas and they would rely on their own transportation or on public transportation?
We did ask a question on how people get around normally. With 96% drive themselves. We did not target the low-income rental units in the survey specifically, so that might have raised the number that used the various transportation services. But in terms of, we asked them to rank things in general, like their proximity or the convenience to city services. Now, medical and hospital facilities came out on top in terms of just general convenience. We didn't ask them about exactly how far. But that, I think, and in terms of the medical services and then the retail, going grocery shopping and so forth, probably the top two levels of interest that also increase with age in terms of their attractiveness to that market. We do know that the national approach has been typically to go a little bit outside the center city for some of these kinds of developments, but it really depends on the land availability. And trying to build in convenience would be great if you could walk. Walking is, and if you can't build it into walking to the center city or retail, then often the walking is built into the project itself. Van transportation to the various destinations is another option. So I think it'll depend on the types of sites that can be found and the size or scale of the project. But there's definite interest in in the convenience factor in the medical services especially.
Thank you.
Andrew Cole.
Bruce, good job.
Thank you.
Two quick questions. One, anything about this surprise you relative, I know you did work here a decade ago. I mean, in terms of at least your preconceptions of it.
I think when you get outside of the greater Portland area, you almost expect to see low-income concentrations. That's not the case here or in Hancock County. And you have a very strong component of senior households, 65 and older households, that are in the 50 to 75,000 range. You might have a little more difficulty attracting the 100,000 plus market in terms of income. But that surprised me that there was that Hancock County had that high an income level among its senior households. So that seemed very positive. The other thing that I would say, I'm not sure it surprises me, but when I looked at the scores on civic engagement and I looked at the way the various organizations in the region all seemed to work together, was my impression. That seemed unusual. It seemed less parochial than what I'm used to seeing. That there's a regional identity, I think, as well as a city identity was my impression. Coming from the outside, which I think is somewhat unusual and good, positive thing.
And my second question is that a lot of investment capital is located away. You see, have this report in our hand. You see this as being of interest to developers from other parts of the state?
I do. I think it doesn't. Developers and financing agencies particularly would be interested. I think it's not a substitute for, say, someone doing their own market study. But you could use a lot of the information here. For example, if someone's were coming in and say, I'm going to do this many units at this price level or this rent level, it's almost easier to do that and go back to the survey and go back to the study and say, well, what does it say about that? What does it say about that potential? So you've got a lot of parameters here that you could plug in. But each development, of course, is going to have to do its own financial feasibility analysis as well. But I think there's kind of there's not too many. This is the first survey I know of that's kind of gone to this extent in terms of product preference. Most of what I've seen have been focus group oriented or talking indirectly to service providers, lenders, banks. What do you say? What do you see in your customer base? So that's a little more indirect. Here we directly contacted the households. So I think that alone would be quite useful because it's very unusual to have that component as part of the study. Particularly, you have a lot of national surveys, but not too many that are regional.
Hopefully whet their appetite.
I would think so. I think if you get it out there, and I had a request, Maine State Housing Authority, who I talk to once in a while, is obviously interested in the results, techniques, and so forth. And I'm sure the nonprofits and other housing developers, the medical community, anyone that deals with, we all are going to be dealing with the senior market for years to come. So I think it would have high general interest.
Any further questions? Well, again, on behalf of council, we want to thank all the members of the Housing Study Committee for a job well done and well organized, and then Mr. Mayberry for putting it all together, presenting it to us, giving us interim reports as you went along, and I know it's going to be very valuable information as we move on. So again, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, and happy holidays. Thanks.
If I may, it'll be available on the website, and it's the way I would rather distribute it, if possible, so we'll have that up right
Excellent.
away on the website.
Very good. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is it possible to get a couple of those to the public library? That's an excellent resource for them to have. And you
We'll do that.
just good job.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Deb. Thank you. Item number 12, Council Order number 121503. Request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to accept donation of land located on Happytown Road, map 099, lot 019-003-000 from the current owners Thomas C. Gross and Rona W. Gross.
Good
Hi, Mr.
afternoon. The city was contacted by landowners Thomas Gross and Rona Gross and asked if they would like to accept their land as a gift. I gave you attached, you'll find a letter of intent from the Grosses along with a copy of the map to see which parcel we're talking about. The property is located on the Happytown Road and has no structures on it. The Grosses purchased this land many years ago with the intent to build a camp. Since they have moved south and the children followed and have no interest in the property. At this point, the Gross family would like the city to accept the property and hope that the city can benefit from the land. I did check the taxes and everything is up to date, including the March installment. And I also asked Dwight Tilton from the code enforcement officer to go out and check the land, and he did that and indicated that it would be, he said, I would consider it a great deal.
Are you saying the price is right?
The price is right.
I think we can afford that one. What was the acreage on this, or do we have it marked somewhere?
It's just over 5 acres.
All right. Council, any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I had a question.
Sure.
Go
Before
for it.
we do that. Well, we can do a motion, then a question. It's okay. My question was, is how do you get access to it? We don't have a copy of the deed, I guess, so I was just making sure it wasn't landlocked.
It's right off of the Happytown Road.
It's on the Happytown Road?
It's, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a back lot.
No, it is right on.
It's right on the road.
Yeah.
Salt sand shed.
There are restrictions
3.
in the deed that Dwight found. Let me see. The deed does list some restrictions as mandated by the covenants of the subdivision.
Motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the tax collector to accept the gifted land on the Happytown Road, map 099, lot 019-003-000, from Thomas E. Gross and Rona W. Gross.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
And because we accepted that as a donation, it's not governed under the tax acquired, we can do whatever we want to with it, if I remember right.
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Next was be item number 13, Council Order number 121504, request of the Finance Director, transfer of the defendants in rem criminal forfeiture document number CR 14-1306 to the City of Ellsworth. Allow the Finance Director to deposit these monies into the police forfeiture reserve account upon receipt of the funds. Finance Director.
Good evening. We recently had a drug case that resulted in an arrest and conviction of a man that had cash in his possession at the time of the apprehension. The money was turned over to the court system. The Attorney General's office has proposed that Ellsworth would receive $2,922 as part of the forfeiture. State law requires that before any forfeitable item can be transferred to the municipality, the council would have to accept these items. So this request is to accept the items and then to deposit those monies into the police reserve account.
Pretty standard then.
It is.
Right. Council.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the transfer of the defendants in rem in the case of State of Maine versus David Spofford pursuant to 15 MRSA Section 5822, parentheses 4, parentheses A, and Section 5824, parentheses 3, to the City of Ellsworth, and to allow the Finance Director to deposit these monies into the police forfeiture reserve account upon receipt of the funds.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 14, Council Order number 121505, request of the wastewater treatment superintendent to approve a service contract for the variable frequency drives and controls with New Horizons.
Good evening. My name is Mike Harris, Ellsworth Wastewater Superintendent. I'm coming before you tonight to request that you approve a contract, a proposal that has been given to us by Horizon Solutions. And that contract proposal would give us service and warranty over some equipment that we have at the new plant. So the new plant now is 3 years old. Majority of the equipment on the plant site is out of warranty. And as you know from the process that we took to build the plant, that we have a lot of electronics on that plant site that make it very modern, but it also makes it critical for us to be able to keep those components in working order and be assured that they're going to be reliable going into the future and in case we have breakdowns or mishaps. Our plant staff, myself and the men that work for me, do not have the level of expertise nor the background to deal with variable frequency drives, programmable logic controllers, and things of that nature. And so this contract provides two things for us that I think are critical. The first being that it would warranty every drive that we have on site and at the pump stations, along with some of our PLC, programmable logic controllers, which are called PLCs, and our motor overload controls. And the second thing that it would do for us is provide us with support in the event of a failure, whereby maybe the drive that we're having a problem with hasn't failed. It has a programming or software issue that maybe I can call somebody on the phone and they can talk me through getting that drive back up and running without having to call in an electrician or somebody from Horizon Solutions to help me fix it. I have two gentlemen here from Horizon Solutions. I have Scott Savage. Scott Savage did a lot of the installation work for all of our VFDs on the plant site, our device net. I know these are terms that you probably don't know except for maybe Gary, because he's an electrician. And then David Q is also from Horizon Solutions, and he's the one that is headed up this proposal for us. And so without any further ado, if you folks have any questions, feel free to direct them as you would like.
Councilor Phillips.
I'm looking at this. It says Horizon Solutions out of Bangor, but its contract seems to be based out of Rockwell Automation. So I assume that they are a part of Rockwell Automation.
We are an exclusive distributor for Rockwell Automation.
Okay. So then the contract is part of, and also he's backed by Rockwell Automation, or just how is that? Because the information says it's proprietary and part of theirs. So.
It will be their field service engineers that would be on site and be called. It is their equipment. We have the distributorship for them. We have a specialist program, an automation specialist program. Dave and I are part of that group. So we're like a secondary resource for Mike.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mike adding up 30-some drives? They come up with about 30, 31 drives?
Yeah, I mean.
It's quite a few, yeah.
Yeah.
The inventory, yeah, that's enough.
Yeah. And so just as a point of reference, some of you may recall we had an issue at a pump station last year where we actually had a drive go down and it was damaged. And we had to replace it at our cost, which was with installation around $10,000. Right. Had we been under this program, it wouldn't have cost us anything. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct. That is correct.
And so.
Mike, I know you said that the wastewater treatment plant is now 3 years old. And after 3 years, things start to speed up as they go to pieces. So far, what's been your experience in terms of failure of equipment, electronic equipment?
Right, so for drives, and for some backdrop, we've had variable frequency drives at the old facility as well as the new facility. we've had several drives fail over the years. Now, in the last 3 years, we've had 3 drives, I believe. One's failed right now that I have to replace. That's going to cost us to replace. It's a small drive. So to replace, to have it repaired is going to cost around $800, and then whatever it's going to take Mike Ebert, our electrician, to come in and take care of it for us. If this passes, then once that's back to normal operating condition, it will be covered under their warranty. And so, but the other thing that is included in this also is not just the drives. We also have motor overload controls that we have on almost all of our buckets. We've had a few of them already fail. And then we have programmable logic controllers. We haven't really had any of the new controllers fail. So the problem that we have is if something like that goes down, usually it's critical. For example, a programmable logic controllers that we have at our plant, one programmable logic controller may control 10 pieces of equipment. So if that programmable logic controller goes down, in actuality, we could have some catastrophic failures going on.
Be in deep caca.
Yeah. Yes. Actually.
Thank you.
Literally.
So what you're asking for is approximately $13,000 a year. Do you have a ballpark guess as to what we might save by doing this?
Well, if we'd had it last year, we'd saved $10,000 because we wouldn't have had to pay for that drive that had to be replaced at the main pumping station. And then this year, we would have saved $800 plus labor for the drive that we still have to replace this year. So, it's very tough to give you a number because going forward, I can't determine what's going to fail and what's not going to fail. So there may be years that we don't use this. That's very possible. And there may be other years where it might pay for itself in a couple of months for that year.
Well, I suppose it makes sense that you wouldn't have brought it to us if you didn't think it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, the critical thing for me is if a drive like the one at the main pump station goes down. Well, let me say this. Also, as part of this contract, they will be keeping spare parts on our site that we don't have to pay for until we use them. I think it's about Scott, you want to address it?
There's one controller is $5,000 to $6,000 for the PLC. That's basically the brain of the operation. So that's going to be on site along with the other ancillary pieces that go into with the controller. Those basically run on low voltage. Gary, you can attest for that. The drives, depending on how well they're grounded, and when there's an event, as we call it, lightning strike, whatever per se, if there's a change of potential, those are higher voltage. They're 480 volts. They're most susceptible to damage, usually in water treatment facilities because they're not in an area like a mill where you've got an isolated system. They usually last about 4 to 5 years. That's what we're seeing. So you figure the average life of a drive in a mill is about 13 years. These usually on average are about 4 to 5 years. You lose 2 or 3 a year. This is a pretty good deal because if it's a large drive, it's going to cost in the range of $6,000, $8,000. If it's a small one, you got lucky that time. We can't really determine in an event which ones are going to go. So, like Mike said, some of them are extremely critical. And you do have redundancy, but we try to get those up and running as fast as possible. The distributorship can only do so much for support. Our automation program, we've given a lot of help to Mike over the years with networking PLCs and with drives. I think it's coming to the point where now the plant is aging a little bit. You're going to have more reoccurrences, especially with drive failures. It just seems to be the nature of every event that happened is going to weaken that equipment until it finally passes, and then it will have to be replaced. It's a matter of whether you want an up and down of cost, or you want to, have it a fixed cost over a period of time. And for his budget, I think this would be a very good option.
And some of the more expensive pieces of equipment that you referenced a few minutes ago, these are things that you can help the crew at the wastewater treatment plant to replace? Or would you have to?
Correct. There would be a Rockwell engineer that shows up. Mike would call an emergency number, which is a 24/7 number. He would get a direct Rockwell employee that would be somewhere on the globe that could speak English. Everybody has to sleep, right? So depending on what time of night it is, there'll always be an engineer that he can get on the phone. They would dispatch a local. We have 6 Rockwell engineers in the state, all qualified to handle all this equipment. We're very fortunate as one of the, Rockwell is as one of the manufacturers, to have that many local Rockwell engineers in the area. So.
Thank you for the information.
You're very welcome. And if a controller goes, like Mike said, it pretty much takes down the whole system, and that would be on site. So the hardware would be there for the engineer when he was deployed.
Mike, also, before we take any motion, can you tell us where this will come from, what fund, or?
The way I understand this, we would not be paying lump sum each year. We would just be paying the monthly installments as we go forward, and it would come out of the professional services line item.
Okay. Councilor Fortier?
The crew alluded to it a little bit. I've worked with Alan Bradley, the grandfather of Rockwell Automation, for 35 years. They're the go-to equipment in motor controls, motor accessories. I've had a business relationship with the Holmes distributors and now these folks, and they've always done what they've said they've done, we're going to do. And that's probably one of the few account numbers I have memorized. So I have, this is an insurance policy, it's nothing else. It's an insurance policy, as he said, to make sure that our expenses on Mike's budget are calm. They're not going wham, bam, nothing this year, 600,000 next year. It's cooling the waters. I think it's a great opportunity to utilize a system where you've got the trained experts coming in and on the phone, checking things out, troubleshooting it. Just like Councilor Phillips getting on the phone with an engineer out in Wisconsin doing a generator. I mean, you've got a trained person that you're comfortable working with. And I applaud Mike for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Is that a motion?
Looking for it.
Did you just not hear me say I have a long-term business relationship and I'll be abstaining?
Oh, okay. I was wondering when the conflict of interest was coming.
And one added benefit, by the way, to this program is every year they will have somebody, an engineer, come to the site, go over all of our drives, check all the grounds, check all the connections, check the fans, because those are common things that make the drives fail. And so at least once a year, we'll have somebody on site going over everything. And if we find a fan out or a ground loose or something like that, we'll be able to catch it before it causes permanent damage.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the wastewater superintendent and approve the warranty and service contract proposal by New Horizons Solutions in the amount of $1,077 per month to be funded from professional services account.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Fortier?
A question. Do we want to include that it's a 60-month period?
Is that the term of the contract?
That is a 60-month.
We can opt out. I mean, this is an opt-out clause in the contract.
For the voice that isn't here, yes.
Make sure we include that in the record. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Those opposed or those abstaining?
One abstention. sir.
One abstention, Councillor Fortier.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Item number 15, Council Order number 121506, request of the City Planner and Public Works Director to extend stormwater inventory and mapping contract with the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm here to talk about stormwater. And the first thing I'm going to be asking you is we have received a grant from the DEP in the amount of close to $90,000. We need to match that grant with $9,700 for engineering services and permitting. And I would also like you to consider to accept the grant, match the grant, and so that the manager can sign the contract. This project is on Davis Brook. Davis Brook is a start.
We're inventory first.
And you can get your items out of order.
Oh, I did. Okay, we're going to change the stormwater project. I'm just going to go to the second one. Thank you very much. I was sure it was the Shore Road, first of all.
Inventory.
Excuse me?
Inventory.
Correct, the inventory. I even had that ready for you to go on in the inventory. I'm going to go like this. So I'm here today to ask the council to extend the Maine Coastal Program Coastal Community Grant to have you consider accepting a $15,000 grant from the state, and to match that grant for $15,000 from the city's local road capital improvement account. In October of 2014, the city hired Sebago Tech to conduct a stormwater inventory and mapping of the piped area for $47,000. $25,000 was from the state as a grant, and the city matched $23,000. With that money, Sebago Tech surveyed 406 structures and 54 culverts. Sebago Tech also compiled archive road construction and stormwater plans to build the most up-to-date field map possible. Sebago Tech developed a GIS data model to be used in the field for data collection, and after the data was collected, Sebago Tech sat down with Larry Wilson and Bernie Hussey to go through all the data and make sure that we ground truth in the data. There are at least 230 structures and 25 culverts that were not captured with the first portion of the money. The state offered the city an additional $15,000 that we would need to match with $15,000 of the city money to keep the project going in the spring of 2016. The $30,000 is going to be used, 17.6 will be used to do the 230 structures. That's $73 per structure. And 25 culverts, that's $32 per culvert. $7,800 is earmarked for the GIS database completion and the training for Jana. And $4,600 is management and reimbursable. Before I pass on, I let John Giles from Sebago Tech take over and talk more about what we've done with the money and what we're going to do, so you get a flavor for the work that's been conducted. I want to talk about why this project is important. We started the inventory partly to capture the institutional knowledge that now lies in the head of Larry Wilson. And before every time he comes up at the second floor, he always talks about when he's going to retire. So I think it's very important that we capture that knowledge out of his head and we put it on a map. So we started a project. I'd like to finish the project before he retires. I think it's important that we understand the city's stormwater management facilities just the same way that we look at water, sewer, and the road system. These infrastructures are equally important, the stormwater, for urban development to take place. The problem with the stormwater is that we only focus on it during and immediately after the flooding happens. We talk about it when there's a sinkhole on Main Street. We talk about it when High Street is flooded, or when the entrance to Dollard Farm Way is washed out, or when there's a house that's been significantly impacted. And then we quickly forget about it because the water recedes. Flooding problems affect economic productivity, they affect property values, and they affect safety. Stormwater also affects water quality, like in Cart Brook. I've talked about Cart Brook and the water quality issues because of stormwater. And also the Clean Water Act that governs the water quality that you need to meet is not going to go away. For these reasons, the Planning and the Public Works Department, with Larry, we've been leading the effort to inventory and map the stormwater system. This is a project that is part of a greater stormwater management effort. It's going to provide much needed information to assist with stormwater ordinance amendments. They are close also to 70 stormwater retention ponds in the Ellsworth Urban Core. We mapped them. From the training that Jan is going to get, and from the stormwater management plan as-built, stormwater management as-built plans that we can require right now from developers under the present ordinance, we're going to be able to enter and maintain an additional layer. This is the first step toward having a comprehensive inspection program also of the stormwater facilities that lie all over and will continue to grow. This work also complements the 2014 work that the Nature Conservancy has done. They inventoried 85 stream crossings across the city. They look at the type, the flow, if it's perch, not perch, a whole bunch. And we have all this information right now, and that was done free of charge. It's also going to help us figure out what to do with Cart Brook in the long term. Finally, it's going to lead us toward looking at asset management. So that's my spiel on the stormwater inventory. I'm going to let John Giles talk about more what you got for your money and what we're going to be doing. Basically, it's the same thing for phase 2, if that's okay.
Good evening. My name is John Giles. I'm with Sebago Technics out of Lewiston and South Portland, and we were hired by the city to do a stormwater inventory project in an attempt to once and for all map the stormwater system here in Ellsworth, and to get a handle on where it is and where it isn't, and aspects of it such as pipe size and age and condition. I'm working on the project with one of our engineers, Steve Sawyer, who's worked here in the area before. Initially, when we started doing the work, as the city planner said, we've mapped 406 structures. That includes catch basins and drainage manholes, and about 54 culverts. And initially, one of the challenges we had with the project was trying to estimate just how many structures there were, because the inventory information is fairly scarce and scant. We did get a hold of many as-built plans and design plans, at least as much as we can get from the city's past consultants, and some plans that the city had in its possession. And from all that information, plus GPS work in the field, we were able to, as we've said, map about half of the system, maybe a little more. And what we estimate to be left is about 230 drainage structures, catch basins, and manholes, as well as about 25 culverts. In the map on the left there of the walkway is a general layout of the project. The central core of the project that we've already mapped is shown in green. That's sort of phase 1. And then phase 2 is the sort of pinkish beige area. And that's what we're proposing to do next. The initial area, phase 1 in green, was again sort of the core of the system, the older part of the system. And as we move forward with doing phase 2, we hope we're to find more plan information and a system that's in a better condition and will be a little easier to map as we move into that because those sections of the system are newer. The proposal we've provided the city for phase 2 basically addresses additional field data collection, followed by the stormwater pipe mapping from that field collection, and then final reporting of the information to the city. The final reporting would also include training for Jana and other city staff perhaps to understand how they can take the data that we prepared and maintain it over the long haul for the city using the existing processes and procedures in place in the city through as-built plans and the city's own GIS software. Again, this is the proposed phases of the project, and the central sort of portion there in green is phase 1, and the sort of tan or beige colored areas are phase 2. The field data collection will basically allow us, using GPS equipment, to go out there and map all the catch basins and the drainage manholes, the pipes and the outfalls that are part of the system. Figure out how they're all connected by observing within each structure the pipes that are present, recording the material, the size, the direction, whether it's an inflow or an outflow from the structure. Also collecting general condition information about the structure so that as the city starts looking at asset management, starts looking at CIP budgets, they can get a handle on where the system is in fairly good condition, where it's in poor condition. Beyond that, just the mapping of the features, we're also collecting attribute information or information about each structure in terms of the type of pipe, the size of the pipe, the materials of the structure, recording the coordinates, the location of each structure, and also recording accurate elevations on the structure. Because as the city starts looking at stormwater management, it's important to know accurately what the elevation of the pipes and the structures are so that you know which way the water flows, and if somebody was to come in and develop a new project or retrofit an existing site, you would know how that improvement on the site needs to match into the existing system. With elevation information as well as the mapping, long term you can do things such as stormwater modeling to look at how the system would perform under different development scenarios so that you can appropriately size what is being proposed to the existing system or know how to modify the existing stormwater system to accommodate new development. As the city planner mentioned, we've already completed a fair bit of the mapping. This is just one little screenshot of it. In many cases, a lot of the stormwater infrastructure is in the street, but in some cases it's actually cross-country or off the street and runs down between city blocks and between streets, and we're attempting to map that as best we can as well. Some of the older parts of the system, like some of these cross-country lines that go down between blocks, there's very little documentation on where those are. We attempt to find some of the structures in the woods or in the fields, but in many cases it seems to be a stone box culvert where there are no manholes set on it. We'll find manholes in the street or catch basins connected to it once it crosses the street, but that's about the only evidence we have of what the size of the pipes are there. And then with the proposal to the city, the final reporting again includes the delivery of the final GIS mapping and databases to the city, training of the city staff to use and maintain the data beyond the initial project, and then also a summary document just describing the work completed and what still remains yet to be done. There is an indication that there might be some additional work beyond phase 2, but it really depends on how much we're able to piece together during phase 2. And that's the end. I am here to answer any additional questions.
Questions? Councilor Blanchett.
$30,000, it says will be used to document approximately 230 structures and 25 culverts.
Yes.
That number will be documented, or that's a guesstimate? And you'll be spending up to that amount, or we would be spending.
The price estimate, and again, it's an estimate based on what we've seen so far and what we believe is in the area that is phase two. That dollar value is based on an estimate per structure. We estimate it costs about $73 per structure to do the measurements and the other documentation processes. In order to come up sort of unit cost, it's about $73 per structure. So at that cost, we estimate being able to do 230 structures and about 25 culverts.
All right, thank you.
We may have fewer culverts, more structures, or fewer structures, more culverts, and if we find fewer structures, then we could possibly do a little more in what potentially would be that phase 3 area shown in the purple.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the time.
Question of the city planner. You're asking for the match to come from the local roads capital improvement
Correct.
account. Is that correct? Okay. There's also mention of considering a request for an additional $20,000 in the upcoming budget. Is that to add on to what's going to be done in this phase, or just is that more
It
work,
was just
more of the
disclose-
same?
Yeah, it's disclosure purposes. When I came the first time, I believe either Councilor Beetham or 40, I believe it's Beetham, that asked me, "But you're going to come back?" And I said yes. And I just want to be upfront that to do modeling and to really make it all work and get it where we want it to work, it's very likely I'm going to come back for more at budget time. That's why we want to do this also in the spring, as the city, the state has offered the money now. We need to extend the contract that is expiring in December. If we don't do this, the money's gone, so.
So the 20, will there be a match on that too, or is that just?
Nope, that's not, we're not,
Okay, so that would be just 20 extra.
if I can find some
From
money, I'll apply for it.
local
Hopefully we're
roads.
not, but
Okay.
I'm not
Yep.
there. Yeah.
No, that clears it up for me. Thank you.
I just have a clarifying question about the map. So I'm seeing, so there are 3 colors and 3 phases. So I get confused about the colors of the phases.
Yeah.
So green is phase 1. That's what's been done.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then there's a purple blob across the river. That's phase 2.
That's stormwater.
Is that phase 2?
That's stormwater.
The purple is phase 3. The sort of orangey beige color is phase 2. So it's
orangey
this,
beige,
yeah.
okay.
So it's down by was it Home Depot and Myrick Street.
Okay.
And then along Route 1, and then up beyond the hospital, and then I think this is up it's either Birch or Park, I think, the upper reaches of that.
Departure Street area.
Oh, okay. That'd be a good name to study in.
Stormwater management.
When we started the project, we started at the bottom of the watershed and we moved upwards because the way this stormwater networks typically always are built, they outfall somewhere down in a receiving body of water. So to figure out where the system is, if you don't have good base mapping to start with, you start at the bottom, you start working up each of the branches like the tributaries of the stream network. That's what we've done, and with the available funding to date, we ended up finding twice as many structures as any of the inventory lists indicated there would be.
That was based on the 1965 or 56 Myron map, famous map. So that was the best tool we had. Just want to mention that.
So what we're attempting to do with the additional phase is to finish off going from the bottom of the watershed out to the outlying parts of the watershed and finish off the mapping so that the system can be mapped in total. And then, as the city wants to look at stormwater management and what it can do for stormwater management with that mapping information as well as the data that we're collecting, that can be fed into hydraulic models that would model the system. It would allow you to calculate the capacity of the system when it comes to considering development or considering CIP improvement requests and how to manage the stormwater to maintain the quality of the community, the qualities the community wants to maintain, such as water quality as well as flood prevention, street flooding prevention, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Beeson, do you have a question?
Yes. This is for the city planner, and it's about the area that we've been talking about doing stormwater management on the top of the hill on Main Street by the hospital. If you're going to map that area or do those, are you going to do existing or are you going to do planned?
The Carlisle Street area?
Yeah, that's correct.
I thought we were doing plans for Carlisle. Carlisle Street is with the plans from the Woodland and Curran.
Okay,
That was
so
the end.
that would not be existing, what's in the ground right now, it's what would be planned?
No, it's existing, sorry. I thought if you were asking me if you're gonna go underground to do it, or were you gonna use the plan that Woodland and Curran developed for that area in terms of what was existing?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The second question I have is, once we get all of this, how are we going to maintain it, and how are we going to make sure that any changes in it get onto the plans?
So the idea is to train our GIS person, which is Jana at this point, to be able to enter the information, the new information that we get from as-built plans. The ordinance right now allows us to request as-built plans, so we're going to do this definitely for stormwater, and we're going to enter those data as they come. And we should do the same for road construction projects that are handled by the highway department. So Janet will be able to enter those figures.
Okay, and the question I have is it allows us to ask for them, but we don't necessarily ask for them all the time. I just want to make sure there's something in place that we get the information necessary to make sure these plans are updated so that they're usable all the time and don't become outdated and set on a shelf somewhere and not be any good. And I guess that's my thing, that going forward, we need to make sure that in the ordinances someplace, that the information that's necessary is provided to us.
Yeah,
Otherwise, these plans are going to end up being useless.
We can make it, as we've discussed, we can make that request mandatory, just not for staff to request the information, but it's mandatory when they already are required to provide the information electronically. We can add to it that we have to have as-built plans for stormwater.
And that would include all the digital information for the GPS?
It will include the information in a format that we need to enter the information into the system. So the attributes and the field we require, are going to be, there's going to be a set of fields set up, and we're going to be filling this up. So they're going to have to provide us the information. You're asking if they're going to provide a survey level? The level of the information, will it be like?
Would it be the same information if we went out and surveyed the structure itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Survey grade was the word I was looking for. Yes.
So the reason we're using GPS in the work we're doing for the city is because a lot of the information on the old plans, it's not clear what the elevation datum of the original work was on, or it is not clear whether some of the plans we're looking at really are as-built plans. They could be design plans, and with many construction projects, there's the design plans and then how the project actually gets built. With as-built plan requirements in place that the city's talked about, you wouldn't necessarily need to use GPS measurements to achieve the same level of mapping going forward. If you require as-built plans, that information can be taken off of the as-built plans and mapped into the city's existing GIS software without the need to actually go out and field verify it, unless there was some question as to whether the as-built plan accuracy was questionable, that's being turned into the city in the future.
The reason for the question is because in the past, we have accepted original plans, construction plans with field notes for changes. If those sometimes are not 100% accurate, so given that going forward, it would be that we would have to have as-bills rather than just field plans with notes.
Correct. So, Councilor Beaton, my idea is that once we have the field laid out of what needs to be entered, we can request from the developer a list of what they need to provide. They need to provide the plan, but they can also provide us the information for us ready to import into the system. Which is a table format. They provide it to us. They have to provide it, and we just put it into the system.
Follow-through isn't always the very best, and
Correct.
I've found over the last 20-plus years.
Is there a software cost to this?
No, you have the necessary software already.
Yes, well, but if we are to add, eventually, we would like to look at an asset management module, and there are some costs to that.
And my second question, following up on Steve's questions, is there a way to make it that once the project is built, that it gets inspected to make sure that everything that we required has been entered? To verify the information that we received.
An as-built plan. So an as-built plan, and I mean, there's people in there that are a lot more expert than I am about with as-built plans, but because I'm not an expert, but an as-built plan basically is an annotated plan that includes the changes that happen on the ground. For the verification purposes, do you want to answer how that works in the field, or?
Larry Wilson, Public Works Director. For the past 20 years, I know, I've been asking for as-built plans for all my engineers on any of my water projects. The city's been kind of lax on that over the years of asking for the as-built plans. It's in your contracts with your engineers. Supply us with a finished as-built plans. That's when the contractor takes all his field notes, the engineer takes all his field notes, they put them all together on a set of plans and provide you with finished as-built plans. Now what we do with that afterwards, that's in-house. What they're trying to set up now is with Jana, and I've been giving her some. I gave her Andrew's as-built plans on the stormwater we just finished over on State Street. She got a electronic copy of it too. I got the paper copy, and she's already got them in the computer. So we are putting stuff in, we are asking for it. The other thing we've got to do is ask for the developer to give us a finished as-built plan of that project when it's finished. And through the ordinance, I believe you can do something like that. I'm not sure, but you should have them. Because anytime anything happens on the developer's property, they come to the city to find out what's on the property, because nobody knows where any of the plans and stuff are. I've had the Main Coast Mall, I don't know how many times they've called me on the water line and stuff out back. It's private, it's on private property, but we have a copy of what's in the ground out there and where all the shut-offs and everything are, because we're the ones that get called out, even though it's private. We have to serve the public. And I hope that answered your question as best I could.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
May I say one more remark?
Yes, ma'am.
I think the best way to do it is that they don't get a certificate for, so there's two stormwater. There's public roads stormwater, and there's also on private development with planning board. For the planning board, what we can do is we do a requirement that there's no certificate of occupancy issued until we have these documents in-house. The plans would come in quickly.
All right,
Anyone else
anything
here?
further? Council?
Just,
Councilor Beetham?
Mr. Blanchett, once a set of plans are made and the engineer stamps it and puts his name on it, he's guaranteeing it. So, I mean, your as-built are going to be good information.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Moore.
hope I got the right one. Move to approve the extension of the Maine Coastal Program, Coastal Community Grant, accept the additional $15,000 grant and match it with the $15,000 from the city's local roads capital improvement account.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Councilor Beetham.
Can I ask what the balance is in that account? Do we have any idea what the balance is in that account? Local roads?
Keep talking, I can tell you.
104? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor first. It's been moved and seconded. Is any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? What was your vote, Councilor Phillips?
That was a yay.
Okay. That's 6-1. Councilor Beetham opposed. Moving on to item number 16, Council Order number 121507, request of City Planner and Public Works Director to accept the Shore Road Stormwater Grant.
As I started earlier, we received a grant for close to $90,000 from the MDEP. I am looking for the city to match that grant to hire Andrew McCullough for engineering, design, and permitting in the amount of $9,700, and for the city also to accept the grant. I think I said that. So this project is on Davis Brook. Davis Brook runs from the Whitney Field, from an unnamed pond, and it goes into Leonard Lake. It discharges at the Shore Road. It's about 3/4 of a mile long. It has three crossing. There's three culvert system that crosses the three road that crosses the stream. There's a railroad crossing, which is a 28 square feet concrete culvert, which is adequately sized and at grade. So there's no problem with that culvert. As you go down the watershed, John was saying he goes upward, we go downward, because there's more and more water that accumulates as you go down. The middle crossing is at Route 1A State Street at Smith Trade Winds. It's a 12 square feet right now, perched and undersized culvert. It's going to be replaced starting in the summer 2016 along with the Route 1A project, and it's going to be replaced with a 32 square feet precast concrete culvert that will be at grade with an open bottom. So the increase from a 12 to 30 square feet is going to let water move a lot quicker. The receiving culvert is at Shore Road. Right now it's 4.5 square feet. It's an old granite box culvert, and it's going to be replaced. What we're proposing is to replace it with a 40 square feet open precast concrete culvert. Right now, the State Street and the Shore Road crossing are both basically pinch points, and they disrupt the natural flow of the water. If the shoreward culvert just stays at 4.5 square feet, it's definitely going to worsen the situation in the result of the, as I said, the State Street getting much bigger. So what we're gonna do is, the idea is to raise the roadbed, hopefully out of the 100-year floodplain. By doing this, we can't completely say that there will be no more flooding of that area, but we can say that it should decrease significantly the problem. The idea with this project is that when you do work in the water, you can only do it between July 15 and October 1st. So depending on when the State Street project takes place or doesn't take place, there's a possibility that we're going to be trying to do these projects along the same time. We have to make sure that we also coordinate those two projects to make sure that even though we're going to be using Christian Ridge Road for a bypass, there's still going to be some bypass happening on Shore Road. So we're going to make sure everything's timed properly so that we don't create congestion for the people of Ellsworth.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
May I promote? I live at Stoneback Culvert, is on my property.
All right, just go to the podium if you would, please. State your name for the record. Thank you.
I'm Al Eggleston. I live at 187 Shore Road, and that stone box culvert, which is who knows how old, is on my property. When you put in this bigger drainage structure, what's it going to do to my property? Nobody's mentioned that they're going to do this. There's going to have to be some easements. I'm sure there's no historic easements on these things, and our former chief in charge, the gentleman I work for, knows all about these things. There is some flooding. Most of the flooding is because the lake is high. But if they're going to increase the rate of flow, probably dramatically with all these new drainage culverts, has anybody been contacted? Nobody's talked to me about having to put in a structure which will raise the grade in the road and change a lot of things. Just by getting it out of my driveway, possibly, depending on how they do it. So it's something to think about. And talk to us, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Public Works Director, do you want to comment on that, or the planner? Do you have anything further, Michelle?
I know where Mr. Eggleston lives, and yes, just about every time we have a heavy rain, it floods over our Yesterland's lakes at a certain height. They push a lot of water down through. But if you look inside of the box culvert, it's not even 4 feet across it inside there. It's caving in. Eventually it's going to have to be replaced. It was an opportunity to get a grant towards it and also to make the water more passable down on the Shore Road, since they're making a bigger culvert up on State Street that the state's doing. We figured this would be a good opportunity. As far as contacting Mr. Edgerton, I have not contacted him. I don't know if the city planner has contacted anybody, but we're just in the preliminary of getting things started. Eventually it's going to be replaced along with a couple other things done on the Shore Road to keep the flooding.
Right.
We've closed the road down, I think, 2 times this year so far. And we've closed it down in the past because kids love to go down and go through the water. And when you get them floating now with the big tires and they're going out in the river, that's up farther, but that's a place that a lot of current goes across when it does flood. It's a flash flood. It comes quick, and then it goes away quick. It doesn't stay for days and days down there, but it does happen.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking for, you're just looking at approval now. I mean, you haven't engineered it. This is
No, we're looking
to
for the
engineer.
matched engineer to design it right now.
So those engineering fees that we see tonight come out of that grant, or is
Nope,
it,
that's a local match.
and it's from, is that local roads again?
Local roads program again.
Capital? Councilor Blanchett?
Will the engineering look into the effect on the Eggleston property?
In terms of during construction, or as flooding to be lessened, or?
Yes. And all of it.
I mean, a contact of some kind.
Always. We're just right now in the preliminary. We don't enter property or do work without the necessary construction easement if necessary, or whatever we need to do.
But I'm wondering if the engineering shows that it's going to flood, you know, his lawn, for instance. I'm just picking that out of the air, down by the road where it doesn't now.
The purpose of increasing the culvert is to decrease. We're going from a 4.5 foot square foot cross-dimensional to a 40.
Right.
That culvert is going to be under the road, which we own, and I can't talk for Andrew, but it's going to be like any other road projects that we do.
I would just like to have him, I'd be more comfortable to have him also consider the effect on the neighboring property, if any. That's all.
Point well noted. I don't, the project, the intent of the project is absolutely not to impact or flood someone. It's to actually hopefully relieve a potential situation.
Easy on the upstream side, it's gonna be leaving.
Yeah, relieve the water, because right now what happens is it's so small, it's just going to back up when it can't go in fast enough.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Question for the planning director. Does the DEP require a public hearing as part of the process, similar to what DOT requires?
I don't think so. This is
I don't believe so, we replaced the culvert.
no.
Yeah.
It's just
But-
regular
and
permitting
sec-
process.
Okay, but secondly, certainly, any member of the public, if they have questions, is certainly welcome to come in
Absolutely.
and meet with the staff and the engineer to fully understand what's going to take place.
And Mr. Eggleston, point is duly noted, and I'm going to make sure that Andrew is fully aware of your concern and that he gives you a call. Absolutely.
Excellent. Yes, if you come to the podium, please. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Betsy Eggleston, married to Al Eggleston. The floods that we've lived at the property for 26 years. The floods are quick. We're flooded, we're an island for a very short period of time. But I think, we weren't even going to be here. We didn't know this was on the agenda. And we have started coming to these meetings because the impact of development on Ellsworth, wherever it may be, Shore Road, my heart started pounding when I saw that item. Or Parcher Street, or wherever in Ellsworth. The ideal of neighborhoods, the quality of life that's in these neighborhoods, or even in the city. The Moore Center is a wonderful addition to this town. I just hope that the neighbors on any project would at least be notified ahead of time that there is going to be something happening. If we had not come tonight, my husband and I, we would not know about it. And it would be terribly upsetting to have equipment come in and start doing things without any explanation from the city of some sort. A letter notifying us or something else. Yes, I have begun to read the notices in the Ellsworth American. And I get nervous talking in public, but please let the people involved know ahead of time what's going to happen. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eggleston.
have no further comments.
Okay, thank you. Question to our attorney, if you would, Mr. Bear. Some of the proposed language for the motion, one is to accept the grant, the MDEP grant. The other is to authorize the engineering to be done. So there's a dollar amount there. And then the other is to allow city manager to sign the contract. I mean, should or could all three of those be lumped into one motion? Since
I think that they could certainly be lumped into one motion, and I don't think that anything that you've described as being a part of that motion or a series of motions authorizes the taking or disturbance of private property. I'm understanding that the project is probably within the existing public right-of-way, as it's described. But if not, there's nothing that you're doing that is authorizing that. We'd have to come back and have you approve of any incursion, need for an easement or whatever it might be into private property. But as I understand your question to me, I don't have any difficulty with you parsing that motion as one as opposed to three separate motions.
Okay, that clarifies. Thank you. Council action.
Mr. Chairman, move.
I'm sorry. Let's. I just want to hold for a second. Ms. Eggleston wants to speak. Yes, ma'am. Please. Thank you.
It's not, for me, a matter of how wide the right-of-way is or the fact that it is probably all on city property. It is a matter of courtesy and allowing the residents of Ellsworth to be proud of what is being done, to support the project that's being done. But if we don't know about them, we're going to be less supportive of it being done. And that's all I'm asking. Legally, I know you have the right to come in, but maybe we've planted a tree, maybe too close to the line. That was something our daughter, we have an oak tree that started out on Pleasant Street, and then we moved it when we moved to Shore Road, and it is a nice oak tree. And it's things like that. We could have it moved if we had the forehand knowledge of what was going on.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Moore.
I appreciate very much your concerns, Al and Betsy. It's my understanding that this is just the very onset of this plan. And it's also my understanding that before any piece of equipment comes out to your house that's going to do that caliber of work, even though it's in the right-of-way, somebody will be there to talk to you about it.
Thank you very much.
City planner, anything further? No.
The points are duly noted, and I'll make sure that
The
if we
engineer
do- if
gets
you-
the message.
correct, absolutely.
Go. Councilor Fortier, back to you.
Mr. Chairman, I also appreciate all the input. To me, this is like, we're just deciding that we're gonna have breakfast tomorrow. Let's look what's available for breakfast and plan our breakfast. This is just the initial step in order to grab this $90,000 from the state for a possible project to upgrade this culvert. It may never happen. We hope it does, and we hope it does it very well and in conformance with the neighborhood, because I remember it as the Deck Row Farm. Move to approve, number one, to accept the MDEP grant of $89,354. Number two, the hiring of Andrew McCullough in the amount of $9,700 for engineering and permitting to be funded from the local roads capital improvement account. And third, to allow the city manager to sign the contract between MDEP and the city.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Councilor
I
Beetham?
have one thing. You mentioned a box culvert underneath the railroad.
On the upside stream of that, you have a 24-inch culvert that goes underneath the walking path. That's, so,
It's one culvert that goes underneath both.
but it's not an open box culvert underneath the railroad.
It's bigger than 24.
That's a much bigger one. I looked at it the day before yesterday.
It was put in the walking path and also the railroad path.
It covers both.
So I'm saying, I bring this point for one reason and all, because we assumed that it was a box culvert underneath the railroad, and that's what she said. It's not. And because somebody didn't have the proper information. And it brings back the point of the same thing about the stormwater. You gotta have the proper information.
The report says that it's a concrete culvert crossing, doesn't say it's a box culvert.
Okay. It's neither one, it's plastic.
There you go.
That's what you need to do it anyway.
Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion? That's unanimous, 7-0. Item number 17, Council Order number 121508. Discussion and action on the appropriateness of a moratorium on land development in the neighborhood zone. And this is sponsored by Councilor Phillips. I don't know if you have any comments to get it started or not?
No, Mr. Neward had come before the Finance Committee and approached us and asked and raised some valid points, and I felt that it was appropriate that we just be discussed in a public forum. And thought this would be a good method and appropriate for the folks in the neighborhood to be heard or be seen and hear our thoughts and processes in an open forum. One of the things that Mr. Newitt mentioned was the fact that it seemed that this had been rushed through and that not this particular project, but the zoning ordinance. I thought about that, and one of the things I was looking through, I went through my emails. The Zoning Update Committee, I have emails dating from December 15th, 2005. That's when it started. I think we finished and authorized in 2012. So that was 7 years from start to finish. And in this room, there were countless meetings held, public meetings between the planning board, the city council. Citizens were asked to come. Once in a while, someone actually did. So it wasn't anything that was rushed through. There was plenty of interesting debates between city staff, the people that served on that committee, the council members, and it's a work in progress. We did the best we could with what we had in front of us, and some of the points we may not all agree with, but by no means was it a rushed and hurried document that was passed through to help anybody on either side, either the developer or the, it wasn't skewed either way. It was tried to be a fair and honest document.
I think that some of those meetings were actually quite animated.
Yes.
And I think another key term that you used, that it is a work in progress. And I think it's important that periodically we do take a second look and see how things are going.
Mr. Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my role here tonight would probably be to advise the council on both procedure that you are either going to embark on or not, and also on the law that would guide any decision that you might ultimately make on this moratorium question. First, procedurally, as I understand it tonight, although we took public comment, this wasn't a public hearing. A moratorium ordinance is an amendment to your existing zoning ordinance or land development code. As such, you have to have a public hearing. It has to be noticed a certain number of days, a certain number of times, etc. So I just to let everyone in the audience know and to let the council know if they weren't aware, this isn't you couldn't take any final action tonight. You might have a consensus that you want to explore this further, or you might not, but you're not at a stage where you could vote this up or down. There's really nothing in front of you to vote up or down other than a concept. You don't have an actual ordinance or written language, that, as I understand it anyway, that's been published and noticed and all. If you get to discussing the merits of a moratorium proposal, the state statute that you would need to be guided by, and Attorney Barrett made reference to it. It's in Title 30A and it's Section 4356. When a community such as Ellsworth has an existing ordinance, if there's a proposal for a moratorium, that proposal has to meet one of two criteria. It has to be based on necessity, which the statute says you would enact a moratorium, which is basically to call a timeout and say, okay, we've got to rethink this situation that's on our doorstep. And that necessity would be to prevent a shortage or an overburden of public facilities. I'm not here to tell you whether the public facilities are adequate or are overburdened. I've heard mention that you're familiar with the planning board proceedings. I know that members of the audience have spoken tonight about occasions when there have been sewer backups, and we've heard similar testimony at the public hearings in front of the planning board, and we've also heard the city staff weigh in on the adequacy of the public facilities at the planning board stage. But that would be one basis for your decision. The other basis might be that you make a determination that the application of existing ordinances or laws are inadequate to prevent serious public harm. I understand that the existing ordinance was the subject of many years of debate, as probably was the ordinance that it amended or replaced years before that. In my opinion, as a practitioner who sees a lot of these ordinances in a lot of these communities, it's pretty tried and true process that you have. Your regulations are, you're regulating everything from stormwater to traffic to noise, etc. In your ordinances. So to find that the application of the ordinance, it's your decision, but to find that it's not adequate would probably be a stretch. But more importantly, it has to be inadequate to prevent serious public harm. And I think when the legislature adopted the statute, it was not saying that serious public harm was that which might be the impact felt by a surrounding neighborhood. Serious public harm would mean a more general statement about the public harm to the city of Ellsworth generally. My role isn't to tell you that I think you should or shouldn't adopt a moratorium. I just want to be able to assist you in whatever decision you ultimately make, so that if we end up in front of someone with a black robe, we've made the right decision.
One thing to maybe add to that, not that it wasn't complete, but in an ordinance review when we're talking about land use, et cetera, isn't it pretty much, because we have a planning board, isn't it pretty much the case that those ordinances would come to the planning board if there was going to be a review, if there was going to be some kind of change in the ordinance? Anytime I've been on council and had to deal with that, they came through the planning board process first, and then they made their recommendations, yea or nay, and then it came up to council, and we decided what the ordinance would be or not be.
Your ordinance, like most other communities, has a provision in it that the process is such that the planning board entertains a proposal or is asked by the council to investigate a proposed change, makes a recommendation to the council. The council has the legislative authority to make those changes. The legislature has determined that in an instance of a moratorium, that process can essentially be short-circuited, if you will, with a direct appeal to the council and action on the part of the council to call the timeout, which is known as the moratorium. So this is a rather unique process, but one that is guided by at least some general principles in the statute that take it out from under the specific provisions of your ordinance, which does otherwise require that sort of review and recommendation.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Councilor Blanchett.
A moratorium on this particular project would also affect the whole city, though. Is that correct?
It should not. It should, you would want to make this moratorium as broad yet as narrow as necessary to accomplish the end. As I understand the issue, it's that this area we call the neighborhood zoning district allows for a use that some people find objectionable. Whether it was allowed under the prior iteration of the ordinance, where I think this was residential one perhaps, is something that we would need to explore, I think, and evaluate whether to adopt a moratorium or not. But if you were to ask that we draft a moratorium ordinance for your consideration, we would try to narrowly draft it. It should either be geographically described by boundaries of roads or some other dimensions, or it could refer to the neighborhood zone. And you could say that development, the processing of permit applications for multifamily development in the neighborhood zone shall be put on hold, or words to that effect. That would then limit you to the neighborhood zone. I see Councilor Forty looking at his map. I don't know, maybe that includes 90% of the yellow. So it's a fairly large zone. Or we could describe it as being, you know, a neighborhood zone served by sewer and water, located within a certain area. Whatever we think is necessary. I wouldn't drill down to this one particular project. I think to be fair to everyone else in the zone, you would want to be a little broader in your reach than that. But your question also implicates another important issue. You do, as everyone knows, there's an application pending right now. Those are words of art. It is a pending application. It's been through another word of art, substantive review by the planning board. If you are to impose a moratorium, if it is your intention to have an impact on this particular project that's pending, you're going to want to make it somehow retroactive. So if that were your instruction or your desire, we would want to have an ordinance, a moratorium ordinance crafted in such a way that it reaches back to some point in time and says, you know, despite this project being, having been reviewed, by the time you act, it might even have been back to the planning board. The planning board can either continue its review after its next meeting or make a decision at its next meeting. But if you want to have an impact on this particular project, you're probably going to have to reach back, which the law allows you to do. We can reach back, as strange as that might sound, and have a retroactive provision in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Can you clarify something for me? Are you saying that you allow the planning board to either approve or disapprove of it, and then consider a moratorium retroactively?
I'm not, no, I'm only aware of the fact that the planning board will probably meet again before you would act on a moratorium. I was only making that practical observation, not that if the planning board were, let's say the planning board got through its process as in the normal course of its business and ruled on this application in January before you next meet. So I think the planning board probably meets again before you do. So let's just say that there aren't any special meetings held and that the planning board makes a decision. And if the planning board denies this project, then probably the need for the moratorium becomes less urgent. If the planning board were to approve this project, you could still impose a moratorium. You'd be imposing a moratorium on the issuance of any building permits or the construction of multifamily projects because the building permit would probably not have been issued. Once the developer starts work, once there's a spade in the ground and earth being turned, then he's got vested rights, and I think that it's beyond your control at that point. Up until then, there's some tension as to how far back you can reach, whether it's appropriate to do so or not, things of that nature. But I think that the developer, once he's put a spade in the ground and turned the earth over, has what is known as vested rights, and any changes you make to the ordinance wouldn't be effective against that particular developer.
Councilor Fortier.
Mr. Mayor, when, careful how I ask this, would there be any chance that if the ordinance was passed retroactive after planning board approval, that the city would be liable for a taking of the value on that land if the end result was an ordinance change that did not allow this project to go forward after it had been approved by a board of the city?
I can't tell you definitively that we wouldn't have some exposure. 25 years ago, there was a case in Portland that's known as the Fisherman's Wharf case, where a moratorium was proposed by petition, and a vote was taken in June. There was an application that was pending. The application actually was approved, and they were ready to move forward and build, but the petition for the moratorium said that it would be effective on anything that was approved after the date of that petition. That was the way it was worded, and no one had ever seen anything like that. And our Supreme Court upheld that, and a lot of people were sued. I'm not so sure that the city of Portland was sued, because it was right there in writing, and as long as the law court said it's okay to do that, the city of Portland was probably in the clear. There were a number of legal advisors to the developer who I think were exposed. But I can't guarantee you that there wouldn't be some attempt to bring an action. I could see the rationale behind it. I think it would be more likely than not that it would be unsuccessful.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Beetham.
this is a project that's before the planning board.
Yes.
As much as everybody thinks we've changed things, the zoning ordinance that is there in the neighborhood zone is more restrictive now than it was when it was just R1. So I think that there is enough latitude in the ordinances to allow the planning board to do its job. I think there's enough latitude there to protect the community, the neighborhood, and the city. And I don't feel that it's my intent to take that job away from them. I will not support the moratorium.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I just
Councilor Perkins.
wanted to express sort of the reason that I'm sitting here on council, the reason that I ran for council was because 9 years ago, there were things happening in the city of Ellsworth that I disagreed with, developments that were coming in that I felt like changed the flavor of the town that I grew up in and the town that I wanted to live in.
Right.
And when I came to the council as a citizen, because I was concerned about this, I had this feeling that there were decisions that had been made preceding these applications going to the planning board that I had not been aware of having taken place. That I was not at the table when those decisions were being made, and I didn't know that they were happening, and that the wheels on the bus were turning, and there was no stopping the bus. It was going, and that point in which I became aware of something changing in my community that I didn't really agree with, there was nothing I could do about it at that point. It was out of my hands, and as a citizen coming to talk about it was tremendously frustrating. So as a result of that, I ran for council. So I'm sitting here because I said, you know what, I'm going to be a part of the conversation that's happening from now on, and so when you're making those decisions that I don't agree with, that make the bus go in that direction, I'm going to be sitting on the bus, and I'm going to be there talking about it with you all, so to make sure that happens. So I definitely feel that frustration, and I totally understand where that comes from. What my hope is, and I really love to see the number of people in the audience coming to speak about how much they care about their community and their neighborhood and Ellsworth as a whole. I think it's fantastic. What I hope for as a city moving forward, as we're making lots of decisions, and there are always decisions being made, is that we do a better job of communicating with the community about when those decisions are being made. And I don't think it's sufficient for us to put notices in the paper and expect that people will read them and respond to them and participate. We do stuff on Facebook. I don't think that's sufficient either. I think that as a community that's growing as quickly as it is our prerogative, and I think it suits us or does us a great favor to be creative about the ways in which we communicate things that are happening and up here. And so I think that we really need to take on a conversation about how we do that. I don't know the best ways to do that, but I think that it's essential as we move forward as a community to think about that and to be really progressive about the ways that we engage citizens in the decision making.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Blanchett.
Mr. Chairman, the R1 zone allowed this. And as I think everybody knows, I live in that neighborhood. And it's, I won't give an opinion either way of my own personal feelings on it. But there were hearings held. It has been several years. And much like being told to eat spinach when I was a kid, I can live with it. And like Councilor Beetham, I can't support a moratorium. I would rather see it go through the planning board process.
Councilor Moore?
I think the thing that I want to determine, or see determined, is that no one's property is made physically worse by whatever construction is going on. Over the years, I've seen a lot of situations where it was never really calculated into the cost as to what's going to happen to the other guy's property. And I would hope that if anything goes on there, that great care would be taken to prevent somebody's property from having more problems because of it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Is it possible to make a brief comment?
Brief comment, one brief comment.
Jason Barrett, thank you. The point I just wanted to make is that a moratorium doesn't change anything. It's by wrestling with the question of whether or not to grant a moratorium or not doesn't really address the substantive issue. What it would allow, and even by at least allowing it to go to a public hearing, is to allow the public to be heard. I know that many people came tonight that didn't speak. They are relying on the fact that they did speak at other meetings, that their voices would be heard. So I just want to be clear that the moratorium doesn't actually wrestle, at this point, you're not wrestling with the substance of what the zoning issue does. And I think I have heard references that the R1 zoning would have allowed this. I think that it probably would be helpful for us to go back and understand. At one point in time, it is my understanding, I can find this out more, that there were, and it might have been prior to the R1 zoning, it did used to be that there was a quarter-acre parcels, a single-family housing. I mean, the zoning process has evolved. So by voting or by allowing a moratorium, all you're doing is saying, let's do a timeout, let's reevaluate the current ordinances and find out if they adequately allow the planning board to take character and fit into account. It may be that through that evaluation process, you come to the conclusion that the existing ordinances do provide sufficient protections. But certainly, the people that are involved in this process now will be involved in that process. You have a significant amount of public momentum. I did a check of people have come up to me and said, "Hey, we saw you on YouTube, or we watched you on television," and I was surprised at that. And I went and I did a scan of the different traffic you have on the different YouTube videos that are out there. You put a moratorium in place on fireworks. On fireworks, you had viewing from home. I think you had about 80 people who watched the YouTube of that meeting at home. When the RSU issue was heard, I think that there were 159 or so people who watched that one from home. At the planning board meeting where this one was held, you had 129 people as of today that watched the 3-hour meeting. You have a significant number of the people that are here and that are at home that are watching this. They're very invested in their neighborhoods and this visioning thing that's going on. All they're asking with the moratorium is that they now be involved in this process that you described, and it's an appropriate process. And it may be that all they get out of it is that they have a better education and understanding about how zoning is done and the goals of zoning and the compromises that have to be made in that process. But it at least allows these people whose attention you now have to be a part of that process, to be invested in that process. And so nothing is lost by putting it into place. And certainly we're coming into the winter. It's not like there's a lot of construction that typically happens in the winter. But if you do the moratorium and you allow people the opportunity to be involved and educated in this process, you'll at least have people that are aware of how the process works, and you won't have unhappy people. They may not like the outcome, but they'll understand the process and feel like they weren't shortcut on that. So I just wanted to make that point that you're not deciding the substance. It's just whether or not the people can be heard and involved in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Council. The matter before us is action on the appropriateness of a moratorium on land development in the neighborhood zone. I'll entertain a motion if council comments are complete.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the city council does not go further towards the moratorium.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? The motion is not to go forward at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I think that there is enough latitude in the zoning ordinances that we need to allow the planning board to utilize those. And if they choose to deny the project, fine. If they choose to go forward, I mean, it has to be the merit of the project. Plus, it's also got to be what they think of the city, the neighborhood, and everything else. And I think this is something. This is a challenge for the planning board, but I think they need to do this.
All right, thank you. Councilor Perkins?
I would just, to Jason's points about the engagement currently, I am of the opinion that a moratorium is probably not appropriate at this point. However, I do think engaging the public in further discussion about our ordinances, as we described the process of doing so previously or earlier, would be appropriate, and I would gladly accept all feedback on where we move from this point forward and changing something, and welcome public input on that, and hope that people would continue to participate in any further review of ordinances.
And we need to further discuss that at the council level.
As we progress.
If we feel it needs to go back to the planning board for review, definitely. There's a motion on the floor, and is there any further discussion on that motion, council? That's a motion not to move forward at this time. All those in favor? Those opposed? Councilor Forty are opposed?
And the reason I
6 to
oppose
1.
is I think it was an opportunity to research it more.
Mhm.
I'm not in favor of, but I was in favor of researching it more.
Mhm. Respect that.
And
Councilor Wong?
I voted yes, with the understanding that we can act retroactively.
Mhm. I think you've heard that very clearly tonight.
Yeah.
Can I just make a comment?
Who we
Quickly,
adjourn?
yes.
So I'm Ann Dale, and I've already spoken at the planning board at 75 Park Street. I just love this town. You know, this town is really great, and so many great things have happened here. And really, you know, the whole definition of an R1 zone, it's changed over the years. So it's not rather that it was an R1 zone before, and we could have done those things in that neighborhood then. It's that your definition of R1 zone somehow escaped just about everybody in town who I see. They're coming up to me everywhere. That the definition of R1 zone changed over the years. When I purchased the home in '79, you know, it was more what it would be like where I grew up in Bath, or where it would be in Cape Elizabeth. An R1 zone, you had certain rights on it, so property protection. And I'm speaking from someone who's got the helicopter landing in the backyard and the group home across the street. It's not that it can't happen in my backyard. It's not that kind of thinking at all, nor it is for anybody here. It's just too much going on in a small area. Okay, so you've already voted, but I really feel that at this point, because I do love Ellsworth so much, that good, responsible development needs to happen for the future, you know? And I think whether it's a citizens initiative or something needs to take a real good look at what's going on here. And I think actually right now I'm ready to be one of those 5 who goes around and gets the signatures and gets something going, because you want responsible development. You do. You've just, you know, now we're going to have this little, it's not going to affect me so much, but it is going to affect a couple of people in this audience tremendously. 10 units on a very tiny piece of land going down with all the lighting and the driveway, and they're 2-bedroom units. Look at it. Do the math. It's insane, but it's already going to happen. It looks like it probably will, but I really feel that you need to take a look at the ordinances. Never mind it's R1, it was neighborhood, whatever. What are the definition of those in the history of Ellsworth over the last 25, 35, 40 years? And where do you want that to go into the future? Okay, so, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. Item 18.
Move adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? We're adjourned.